Let's try that again. So yeah, apologies everyone. I've just realised I've been talking for like 5 minutes and muted. This is the wonderful thing about doing this whole live stream setup is um what happens is you have something that is perfectly functional 4 days and then I try and use it again and it doesn't work as intended. That's a little infuriating. But we're here now. So we're going to have to edit out that first couple of minutes. So yes, once again, I'm Tommy, your host. In fact, everyone knows that I'm muted, which is great. What you didn't see, and so sadly, because it's a small delay on the stream, is you are now finding out that I was muted. Meanwhile, in the Discord, just the word Tommy is getting louder on their Discord chat, just going, Tommy, you're muted. But anyway, so today was AI for game testing. We had a bunch of great talks there. We're going to follow that up with a panel. But this is our last day of bringing in guests who are attendees, speakers from the summer school. Tomorrow, we're going to be having a much bigger focus on the game jam. So now that we've managed to lose the opening couple of minutes by virtue of the fact that my audio was dead, let's just get straight into our wonderful guests. So we're going to bring in a couple of pairs of guests for the first half of tonight's segment. And we're going to be talking a little bit with them about what they do, what their background is, and some of the cool stuff that they've been up to. So I'm going to also bring in the wonderful Enrica Loria, who is my co-host, who suffers with me greatly through every one of these episodes. So first up, please give a warm welcome to our first two guests of the evening. So we have Cristina Garbaccia and Romy Elaine. And let's see if it works. There we go. Good evening, everyone. How are we all?
Hi.
We made it.
Hi, everyone.
Whew. And everyone can hear you as well, I'm hoping. We'll find out in a second. So, yeah, why don't we take a moment, find out a little bit about each of you. So, Christina, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm very glad to attend the summer school. I am a PhD student in artificial intelligence at the University of Michigan, and I have also completed a master's degree in artificial intelligence at the University of Amsterdam. The current focus of my research is on natural language generation and evaluation. When it comes to generation, I am particularly interested in controllable methods for generating text that meets specific criteria, user backgrounds, and literacy skills. And when it comes to evaluation, I am interested in robust evaluation metrics that are not measuring text just across one dimension, such as coherence, readability, but across a multitude of dimensions. And I am attending the summer school because I believe there is a lot of potential to bring NLP technologies into the games area, as well as to use games to enhance NLP.
Awesome. And we have a bunch of questions actually with regards to some of the work you've been doing, which we'll get to in a second. But Romy as well, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Romy. Last year I graduated from my master's at the IT University of Copenhagen, where I studied game technology. And for the last half year, I've been lucky enough to work with Gorilla, a game studio in Amsterdam, as a junior AI programmer, where I mainly focus on NPC behavior.
Awesome.
Awesome. So let me start with you, Romy, for a bit. So your master's thesis, if I'm correct, it was about like procedural animation, and you also worked with the industry, right? What are the main requirements when it comes with those kind of animation system? Yesterday we talked about believability. Is that something that is important in this context too?
Yes, definitely. Yes, for my thesis, I worked together with IO Interactive. And yeah, we talked a lot about believability actually, because the aim with these systems where you generate animations procedurally is to save animators a lot of work. So you kind of want animations that look good, that are believable, so that animators don't have to do a lot of touch up. So definitely it is important. And definitely another thing is really important is performance, which is really something that is quite difficult to get to a good level when you're using machine learning to generate these kind of things.
Yeah, I imagine so. And since you have had both this experience with the industry and also a little bit with research, right? and now you're working in the industry, actually working in the industry. How is that working? Did you manage to bring a little bit of the mindset of a researcher into the industry work? Or did you have to completely change everything of the way of how you think?
I think it's definitely a little bit different because in research, there's, I guess, more room to experiment a little bit because when you work in the industry, you do kind of want to have some sort of guarantee that it will work in the end because you have a lot of deadlines. But I think definitely it's also important to be curious, just like in research, and to keep thinking about, are there more innovative, clever way to fix this? So I definitely try to do that at work as well.
It's always an interesting balancing act, I think, of like trying to, and you know, certainly speaking with developers over the years, like you want to experiment a little bit more, but it's like we have a shipping date, we need to hit it, we've got all the milestones up until between then and now, and always a challenge, I imagine. I'm sure you guys are doing great. With Christina, actually, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, so I was having a look at some of the research that you've been involved in to date, and one of the things that I was really interested in was there was research that you published on analysis in the text involved in microblogging. And I thought that was really interesting given the nature of the text that you're dealing with and the type of language that evokes in that. Do you think a lot of that kind of work could also subsequently apply to like kind of the language of gaming culture, or even particularly around games marketing, given it's becoming much more kind of social media focused?
Absolutely. I believe that natural language processing holds a lot of promise in not only delivering content in language that is understandable to a wide audience, but also it can help with grasping the sentiment of the users, their level of satisfaction. And in microblogs, there are specific challenges given that the text is written in a rather informal note. It is very noisy. It can contain abbreviations, maybe even errors. So natural language processing definitely holds a lot of promise in helping disseminate the content of games in the social media and blog posts in particular.
And there was one project that I saw, that one paper actually that I think it's up on Arxiv now, which you contributed to alongside a significant number of authors whom I would probably run out of time for the rest of the stream just naming all of them. But it was the GEM benchmark for natural language generation and evaluation. I had a quick read through the paper and I thought it was really interesting. Could you tell us a little bit more about what the onus was on creating this and like what you and your collaborators are trying to work towards?
Sure. It is the case that these neural language models that are trained on a lot of text from the internet, they have taken the field, the NLP field, by storm, basically surpassing benchmark after benchmark after benchmark. And the question is, are these models really so intelligent and so good at understanding natural language, or are they only grasping the shallow patterns in the data? And I personally believe that they are rather grasping shallow patterns in the data, and that instead of learning to solve the underlying task inside a benchmark, they are just rather learning how to solve the particular data set. And the goal of the GEM benchmark is to be a living benchmark that continuously evolves and that incorporates a wide variety of data sets, as well as evaluation metrics that assess text along a multitude of dimensions. And another goal is to extend NLP technologies to other languages other than English, because current research is mainly focused on English languages, but there are speakers worldwide from so many countries and so many languages that are underrepresented in NLP research. So the benchmark is an effort in this direction, and I hope it will lead to more robust measures across the field.
Awesome. That sounds really interesting. Looking forward to seeing more from that, I think, in the future.
Sure.
So, hang on. So, thinking for both of you, I think actually we'll ask Christina first. Like you were talking, you were quite excited to come to the summer school, given the potential here. What's been your highlight? Do you think that's far? What's been like maybe your main takeaway?
That's a great question. I want to say that is my second participation in the Games AI Summer School. I also attended Games AI in New York in 2019, and I was super excited to attend this year's talk, given they were a lot focused on bringing AI to the game research space. And I believe there's a lot of potential to use artificial intelligence to improve games. And I found the talks really interesting, both from the academia and in the industry. And I could see the synergy from both this perspective. And I definitely enjoyed the talks that were focused on measuring the user experience and modeling the user as part of the game. And these talks made me realize that the games need to actually be designed with the user experience in mind, and that there are a wide variety of contexts and definitions of fun according to the user. So I think my main takeaway is that while there are a wide variety of possible designs for games, when we are designing games, we need to have the user in mind in the end. That's the most important. And user experience is very varied. It has a lot of meanings depending on the context. And just like the research I'm doing in the field of NLP to adapt language to specific contexts and user backgrounds, I believe that this can bring valuable insights into the game design as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have put that better. What about yourself, Romy?
Yeah, definitely that AI in games is such a big field that there's so many different ways that it can be applied to games, like the modeling players, but also for tools. That it definitely, I think, is a good reminder to keep thinking like, can I use AI here to speed up the process? So that's definitely interesting and nice to see some lectures again and learn about new techniques.
Excellent. Well, I hope you've all continue to enjoy yourself, particularly if you're involved in the jam as well, because we're now into the peak productivity segment, I guess, of the jam. We're going to be wrapping that up tomorrow. So wish you all the best of luck with that if you're involved, and also just continue to enjoy your time with us for the remainder of the summer school. And thank you to both of you for joining us on the stream for a couple of minutes.
Thank you as
Thank
well.
you.
Cheers, everyone. Alrighty, there we go. I'm getting told off because I was actually we have a live chat feed that we use to maintain communication among all team members. I was in the wrong one. Like between that and my microphone going today, this has already been a terrible start for me. So I do apologize. Every production hiccup that we are having today are entirely my fault. But yes, so that was our first two guests of the evening, Christina Garbacha and Romy Elaine. Which I thought that was really interesting as well, because we've got this really nice spread of different types of projects, procedural animation, natural language, and just getting to see the type of work that people are involved in, which is awesome. And my wonderful co-host is currently prepping my guests over in our chat room. And as soon as they're good to go, we'll be able to bring them in. All right, excellent. So our next two guests are ready to go. And we'll bring them in for you now. So please give a warm welcome to Jan Argashinsky and Sarah Gradja. Good evening, everyone. How are we all doing?
Hello.
Hey, good evening.
Excellent. Please tell us a little bit about yourselves. Jan, give us an insight into what you're up to. Where are you based?
Yes, I'm based in Krakow, Poland, and I work at Jagiellonian University, Faculty of Physics, Astronomy, and Applied Computer Science, and we have Department of Games Technology. So yes, I'm mainly scholar. I do also some R&D work for one company called Simpro.
Excellent. And Sarah, what about yourself?
Well, I'm first year PhD student at the University of Abertay, Scotland. I'm from the Department of Computer Design and Informatics. So basically I'm working in the field of affective computing. I have a background on software engineering. And yeah, then I did my master as a computer scientist, and here I am. Like,
Excellent, excellent.
So, so you both share this interest for affective computing, right? How did you like decide to go into this field, and what do you think it's basically the biggest advantages that it can bring to games research in general? Sarah, do you want to go first?
yeah, actually, I would share a backstory. I would say, yeah, how did I get myself into affective computing? Is I would say it was like that last lecture on the last day of the last day of the week, and you walk in the room, you don't know what it's going to be, like the introduction of the module. And when they started like introducing all the concept about affective computing, it was like, oh, this is what I want to be. And actually, it's a conjunction between computer science, psychology, and computer games at the same time. And this is all the things I'm passionate about, and I would say have never dreamed about. So in terms of what it offers, I would see it from two different perspectives. One from the perspective of what games brings to affective computing and what affective computing brings to game. For affective computing, it's what affective computing is offered to games. It would be like how to make or how to adapt a game to the player's affective state and like enhance the gaming experience in whatever way it is. I won't be bringing the the F word as they mentioned. And from the other perspective of what games brings to the affective computing, it can be many things. Like the main thing I would say, understanding emotions and how players or participants or users reacts to the emotions. This is the main things I'd say.
Okay, cool. And for like our audience that maybe didn't follow up the summer school, the F word is fun.
Yeah, fun. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you for highlighting.
What about you, Jan?
Yeah, in my case, it sort of happened because I have masters in philosophy also, and at Jagiellonian there is very strong this aspect of cognitive science and philosophy of the mind. And then I went into computer science and did stuff with games, and then thought, why don't do both things simultaneously? So here I am. It's like from my perspective, it's like, you know, attempt to connect this high level philosophical ideas with something you can actually operate on. So and it's a journey. It's an F. Yeah, definitely.
So that's quite interesting because thinking about like these applications and the changes in which we're kind of thinking about games and the way we're applying elements of game design. Like, how does working with VR, for example, change the way in which we apply our AI methods? Like, is this requiring us to rethink priorities as AI researchers, do you think, Jan?
Yeah, so VR, in many ways, it's similar because you use same methods for, you know, detecting states and so on. But it's different from users' perspective because the immersion is quite different. The platform for immersion is quite different. The important word here would be embodiment. Embodiment is crucial when it comes to affective computing because emotions are, you know, physiological and mental, and embodiment in VR is quite different, and it changes how everything works. Also, when it comes to VR, you have easier ways to gather data, because when you connect this everyday player to all these physiological sensors and so on, it gets awkward. But when you put on the helmet, you can put actually, electrodes in the helmet, you can have oculography in the VR headset and so on. So it is more transparent for the user. So it's just more natural, I suppose. You kinda can't do face recognition, emotion recognition from face, but that's one limitation. So methods the same, but it's different, environment. You will get different data.
Cool. And linking to the emotion conversation a little bit, Sarah, in the last in one of the last episodes, we talked about the challenges of using AI to generate creative content, art such as music, and how or is even possible to constrain AI to elicit specific emotion by using art, such as music, for instance, in a horror game? Or,
I mean, this is a quite complicated question, very tricky question, I'd say. Yeah, the first time I had to think about it is like I went in an endless loop without having a concrete response for that. I would say if we take the example of horror games specifically, or anxiety as an emotion, it can be labeled as one of the easiest emotion to detect or to use or to investigate in a way, because the horror game or the horror context is very framed and also very consistent with all the emotions revolving around anxiety. Yeah, I mean, like to design anxiety or to I mean, like to use AI to generate like visual or sound like context in order to like to elicit anxiety specifically can be in a way achieved. I don't want to say easily achieved, but it can be achieved more easily compared to other emotions in other contexts. If I'm taken back from, or I'm taken away from the context of horror games, maybe I won't have like a very specific answer for that. But I think in order to frame the how to constrain the AI, I think it's better. I think we need to look into the why we are eliciting this emotion and for what purpose. I mean, what we are trying to achieve behind that. Like, okay, we are modifying components and to elicit an emotion, but at the end, what are we going to do with this affective response? So I think the sequence, having a sequence is very important, and I can't say like how to really frame the AI or constrain the AI, because the context matter, and we need to answer the why we need to elicit this specific emotion, and especially what kind of specific emotion.
Gotcha. So it's not an easy problem, not by any stretch. But it's all right. You're still in year one. We're still trying to figure this out. This is early days. I realize that's a big question to drop you at this phase. You're like, oh my goodness, I don't have the answers. So Jan, I was looking at some of the work that you were doing, and one of the things I noticed was you'd studied affective patterns in serious games. So could you expand a little bit on your findings? Are these patterns like different in any way from entertainment games focus predominantly on entertainment versus serious games?
Yeah, when it comes to serious games, the building blocks are the same. I think the most important things when it comes to video game design are mechanics, and mechanics generate gameplays. So when you group these mechanics, you can get this mechanics patterns. I was inspired by works of Bjork and Holopainen. They wrote this nice book on patterns in game design. And when we have one problem to solve when it comes to serious games addressed to first responders, firefighters, and so on. And that problem was with engagement into simulations, because their everyday situations are so stressful, adrenaline pumping, that they have high motivation, but they have problem with engagement into the training. Because training is dry, everyday and repetitive. So our idea was to take this mechanics, this group of mechanics, these patterns, and connect them with stimuli that will give us a high physiological response, and we can map this to effort. And then we can map effort to engagement. So we've created these patterns. We called it affective patterns, and they are interconnective and so on. And in our engine, we have this affective driver that recognizes a situation when the engagement drops, and then we can apply our pattern to, like enhance the whole situation, and then we get effort from trainees. And this is, in very short words, what do we need patterns for? So patterns are, the way of quantifying gameplay, because yesterday on the talk, this issue was addressed, that you need some way to, to cut the gameplay into pieces to know what actually is happening in terms of gameplay, not only in terms what you can see on the screen. These are not the same thing. So one way to have these pieces is to actually address groups of mechanics, and this was our idea to solve the motivation problem in serious games. So that's that.
Excellent. Thank you. Actually, we were just about to wrap up this segment, but I do believe, Enrica, you've got a question that's came in from the YouTube feed.
Exactly. So, Sarah, I'm sorry that was a hard question, but they want more from the chat. So
Gotta feed the audience. Gotta feed the audience.
Yeah. So, horror has strong emotion by design, but what about games with nuanced emotions, such as small points of excitement or relaxations?
Have more, sorry, can you repeat the question?
More nuanced emotions, so not such strong emotions such as in horror games, right? But in games where you have points that elicit relaxations or excitements.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say what I'm trying to investigate is like, I would say like anxiety is, if we look at the emotional space, the whole emotional space with all the emotions, is like there are like subspaces, and anxiety is one of these subspaces. And the thing that makes anxiety easy, because it's like as they said, like on horror games, the emotional experience is intense, and so it affects in a way one of the main components which they talked about yesterday, the arousal. So this is what makes it like one of the easiest. I don't want to use the easy word, but compared to others, because like there is the arousal component that we can measure in a way, and but regarding other emotions is actually, from my perspective, we lack enough stimuli to investigate other specific emotions, especially when it comes to relaxation. Relaxation is very difficult, like because it is like in the center part of the emotional space, which is like kind of the combination of the different, or not the combination, I'd say, but it's like the less intense, depending on what intense, the definition of intense. So yeah, this is what I'm trying to investigate, is like trying to find the exact stimuli that target these specific emotions, among them the relaxation emotion, in order to understand how really people do react to the specific emotions, and among them the relaxation emotion. So yeah, I don't have a perfect answer for that. I don't know how people react or how we can measure that someone is relaxing. So yeah,
We got
maybe
time.
in more few years I would have the answer.
That's it. You got time. There's no pressure. But now we've got two things that's came out of this chat today. We've now got the E word and we've got the F word. So we're going to avoid using those two words, I think, for the remainder. For the remainder of the summer school. Jan, Sarah, thank you both very much for your time. It's been super interesting talking to you both, and I hope you enjoy the remainder of the week. Hopefully we'll get to speak to you later on over in the Discord. Thanks again. We'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you for having us.
Also, a quick shout out and thank you to Zumba Pup, Zumba, how you doing? Good to see you. Who dropped that question in for us, and it seems like he's now haranguing Luke Dickin, who apparently is due to answer an email from around 6 months ago. All right, so that's, once again, that was Jan Argashinsky and Sarah Gradja, who came in to talk a little bit about effective computing. All great guests, once again. It's been really nice. I really enjoy this stuff. This is something certainly our production team work on. We're trying to find people who have a variety of different backgrounds, because also for someone like myself, I'm always just trying to pull in different strands and make sure I'm staying aware, because I'm not as research active as I used to be. Now, anyway, enough about me. Let's get on to our final segment of the evening, where we're going to have a wonderful panel on the subjects of the day, which has been automated playtesting. So joining me once again, alongside Enrica, is we've got Sahara Sadi, from King, and also Christopher Homeguard from Model AI. How are we all doing, folks?
Hello, very well, thanks.
Hi.
Good to see you.
I was going to say, I haven't spoken to you in a couple of weeks, but so I'm looking at the questions that we've got for the panel, and you know what? Actually, I'm going to start with one, because this is something that Christopher, you and I spoke about this, I think, very briefly in a conversation we had elsewhere about the role and behaviour of or really actually the role of quality assurance in game development. And you know, as we saw today, we saw a bunch of really interesting talks from yourselves as well as from the team over at Sony about using AI more and more for automated playtesting, and that's going to have an impact, or it's going to change, I would say, how quality assurance is going to work, particularly in larger studios. How do you see these roles in game studios evolving as a result of this gradual proliferation of automated playtesting?
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, to my mind, one of the things that we're seeing is that, you know, I don't believe that human quality assurance or human playtesting ever will go away.
Yeah.
But I do imagine that those roles could grow into being sort of like, you know, you can imagine a technical QA manager, their role being more about maybe orchestrating and managing tests and managing jobs. So it's sort of like, you know, giving super powered tools is a way to think about it, maybe, to the people who are doing that kind of work. And then it becomes more of an oversight role, or sort of like managing jobs and making sure that you have your attention in the right places, and also directing sort of like the human QA attention basically to the right part of the game.
Yeah. And oh, sorry, Enrica, go ahead.
Related to this, I was wondering if how important is for automated playtesting algorithm to behave exactly like human beings. I mean, probably there are cases in which you want them to behave like in a superhuman way, and others not. Sarah, do you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a very good question. And that's like a distinction we need to make. Like, first of all, is I think when we are looking at gameplay testing, it's important to have the human-like play in aspects. So, like I also during the talk mentioned that we're not looking for having a champion that is playing the game, but rather we want to look at from the perspective of a user, is this a good experience or not? But then at the same time, I mean, you also need to look at other dimensions and purposes of playtesting. So one dimension is to get an understanding of the game dynamics and, like, you know, difficulty of the level and the user experience. The other part of it is, for instance, whether there are crashes in this game, or, like, you know, certain constraints or certain conditions, how they happen within the game. For those cases, I mean, you don't really necessarily need a human-like playtesting bot. But so very often I say, like, you know, if you have the automation pipeline in place, and then you have a basic agent, which is a heuristic agent, it helps a game team get going very far. But if you want to put as part of the process of content automation, then it's important to be human-like.
On that note, Sahar, like, one of the things I was thinking about is the idea of using playtesting AI potentially as a mechanism for tutorialization. Particularly for, do you think that's something that we can actually, like, move towards in particular games, that actually that playtester could essentially become a tutorial mechanic of some sort?
Could you elaborate a bit? What do you mean by tutorial mechanics?
So particularly we want to try and onboard people to let them understand specific elements of a game. And so a lot of our playtesting systems are actually looking to find edge cases that we don't want, whereas maybe you actually want to invert that slightly and actually guide it more towards a particular journey through the gameplay space to achieve a certain desired outcome. Do you see any real parallel there?
I think so. This is an area that is also interesting for us. So, like, you know, an example is that, for instance, if you look at, for instance, casual games where you have, like, you know, a set of levels. So it takes a while for the user gets onboarded, every time getting introduced certain features, right? So having a playtesting bot can give you a sense of which areas the player gets stuck, what are, like, you know, what are the features, common features that is needed in order to be able to win this level. And then, like, you know, figuring out, you know, is this the right place to have this level or not?
Yeah.
Or, like, you know, what are the areas that, like, you know, especially at, like, you know, early progression of the level of the player, that the player gets stuck. So then, like, you know, having a proper onboarding in order to improve the early experience of the players. Yes, definitely. So, in my opinion.
Christopher, what are you thinking?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Like the first time user experience, it's pretty well known. I think that's like super crucial to getting people engaged with the game. And as you're saying, Sahara, I think that you know, inverting that pattern and using sort of like the playtesting, you know, traces that you might have collected, or even just running ahead of the player, can give you sort of like a target. So if you have a model that tells you like where you want the player to be, and then you can search around that or look around that to see, you know, is the player actually going astray away from the place where we want them to be? If we can start predicting that or understanding that, either by running it, you know, like maybe very ambitiously, we could run it in real time, or maybe have a data set that we can look up against. Well, then we can start making like those little course corrections and make sure that people have a good experience as they're onboarding onto the game. And I think people are much more forgiving of sort of like a little bit of frustration or a little bit of a learning curve in a game when they've put a little bit of time into it. But if they sort of like go in the wrong direction in the first few hours, maybe they just leave and play something different, right?
And besides achieving a more exhaustive coverage in terms of problems that players may face, what do you think that are the things that in which AI playtesters may be better than humans? So that's like definitely answer. I will go for AI instead of a person. Saad, do you want to take this?
So, I mean, the idea is around playtesting for us is to be able to support designers, right? So to free up their time to spend time on, like, you know, creating more creative content. So having the playtesting agent is actually there in order to unlock this time for them. So I recently, did an interview with our designers and, asking them, how long does it take for them to design a level and iterate over the level? So for some type of levels, it takes several iterations. For some types of level, it's much easier. It's more intuitive, similar to existing ones. So they don't have that many iterations. And for those iterative processes, if you have a bot that can try out several different versions, is where that particularly the scale and the speed helps them quite a lot, I would say.
Yeah. So the speed and the efficiency of the process, going right through it, that's definitely. Yeah. Okay. And Christopher, what's your take on this? Do you agree? Do you have any other pros for using it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm very much in agreement again, I guess. but the human mind is sort of it's a novelty-seeking system, and it's a learning system, right? So everything that like what humans are really bad at are actually staying the same. We're always changing, right? So whenever you need something, repeated over and over again, and usually in the same way, I think that's a place where AI has a lot to offer, in terms of automation, because it's not enjoyable for humans, and we're actually not very good at it either. I remember one customer we were working with, they were doing a PvP game, and they were doing playtesting manually until we started working with them. And actually one of the things that they were uncertain about in this, it was a smallish 1v1 PvP game. You had card building and then a few teams. But after a few months, they weren't really sure, am I testing the game or am I testing my coworkers? Because they would develop their own styles and their own ways of playing and all that stuff, right? And the AI gives you sort of a fixed benchmark for a way of playing the game. So that's where I think it has something to offer for sure.
Maybe I can add also to what Christopher said. So I think the unbiased view of bot is something that I would add. So you're not prone to certain designs and certain flavors in the design. One other case that maybe I can also add here is that another process that is taking a lot of time and is not that creative for designers is when they have to go back and start tweaking and editing live content, because new dynamics are introduced. So they need to revisit a lot of previous levels. Maybe we are talking about 1,000 level or something like that, right? And that is where being able to have a mechanism that is tweaking these levels is of interest, and then having a playtesting bot that automatically basically iterates over different variations is something that can help enormously.
Absolutely. So I've got a question that I want to ask, but I'm just going to quickly pull from the chat that we have right now. Zumbapup points out, and I thought this is worth mentioning back with my original question about tutorialization, about Daniel Brewer's talk at GDC, which would have been about, I'm trying to remember, this would have been about 4 or 5 years ago, I believe, and it was about capturing player movement traces in Warframe. I believe that talk was subsequently repeated at the Game AI conference, and what they did was they actually built a tutorial bot by reading all this data they got from play traces and then using that to help teach players specific mechanics, which was really great. So I just thought I'd take a moment to point that out, because I remember that presentation and I thought, yeah, absolutely worth pointing out. So this is me. All my questions are big blue sky ideas, but I play a lot of online games. And one of the things that is always going to be an issue in online games is particularly toxic behavior. And one of the things that I got thinking about is that a lot of these testing systems, as you're looking to find specific edge cases that are undesirable, could we, and I'm going to ask you, Christopher, to start, what about an automated troll tester or an automated grief tester that's trying to anticipate specific dynamics in the mechanics before they actually emerge in live play?
It's a very interesting idea, and also, as you're saying, like big idea, blue sky, right? But the one thing I would think there is that trolling behavior is actually quite creative. So I would imagine that when you come up with weird ganking strategies in MMO or other kinds of griefing, right? It's something that even the game designers probably didn't anticipate because they would have designed around it. So what we're looking for are sort of like anomalous things that are possible in the game that just no one anticipated. So we're looking for these like, edge cases and clusters, as you're saying. I think, in time you could imagine having like a bot that explored the game sort of like really exhaustively would find some of these sequences, and then you would be the next test there would be to come up with a way of doing some sort of like pattern recognition where you can sort of like identify that and say like, this is really strange, or maybe you hold it up against actual human data and said like, none of the good law-abiding sort of like normal players did this sort of right. Like we should have a look at that, and then actually identifying like at the behavioral level that it's trolling. I think that would you need a developer, a designer, a community manager, someone to go and have a look at that. I think the identification problem is harder, but finding something that's an anomaly is probably that's a very good idea.
Awesome. Sahar, yeah, any thoughts on this? I mean, I don't play enough Candy Crush. Is it possible for that kind of or like kind of trolling or toxic behavior to actually emerge in those types of games?
I mean, I guess like you observe that more in multiplayer games, and I guess like it's trying to think that I think it's less possible to have that in this type of games, given the nature of like the game and also being a very casual game, right? But I agree with Christopher. For this kind of creative, it's very creative like behavior, and for those kind of things, it's important to look at player data as well. And bot is an enabler to just search the space and identify those kind of patterns easier.
Very much agree with that. I can say, and I think that's a really interesting perspective. Maybe another way to identifying toxic behavior is that once you start having a few examples of players where you know the behavior was toxic, maybe you can look at the behavior that they had up until the toxic moment, and there are actually predictors in there. So it's less about seeing what you do when you're toxic. It's about knowing what kind of player you are before you become toxic, if that makes sense.
On kind of related note, so still in the multiplayer realm, is that even possible to test, or is it even needed to test a behavior, multiplayer behavior? Like if there are, I don't know, patterns that maybe you want to discover because they lead to bug or whatever, and how do you do that? Christopher. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, self-play is kind of like the way there, and maybe biased with player data, right? But I don't see any sort of like foundational reason that you can't do the same kind of like play testing that you do like with a single player character, but you can do it with multiple. Will you cover the full range? Maybe not. I mean, again, sort of like the space explodes, I guess. But certainly there are ways into that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that falls again into the creative space of how players can behave, and that escalates quickly in multiplayer environment. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. On a more general level now, do you have advices in general for developers that want to develop their own AI playtester, especially for the ones who maybe didn't follow the summer school? Sahar?
Plenty of them. But I think what is important, like I talk about two things. It's like, first, where are we going to use the playtesting and for what reason? Second, and related to the same thing, is like have a close relation with designers who are going to use this, right? So a lot of metrics that we are looking at for analysis after this, like, bots gameplay are actually coming from the needs of designers. Very often they have a hard time to describe what they need in a quantitative and numerical way, but they can describe it. And it's a huge responsibility of spending enough time to be able to map those. And finally, I would say, I also think, both it was in our talk and Christopher's talk, that it's important to have the right logging in place. So don't jump necessarily to having a complex model, but rather spend enough time to make sure that you have the foundation and data side in place and metric in place, then start building the model.
What about you, Christopher? Do you want to add something to that?
Sure. Again, it's all about what kind of question are you trying to answer, basically. So one thing is get the telemetry in place, 100% agreement there, and then the other thing is maybe you can really depends on your game. So what are the real pain points for you? What are the designers telling you? And what can you get by with, basically? What's good enough for you? Maybe you don't need human-like behavior. Maybe you just need something that can actually traverse the level, or maybe you can even do automatic testing with a finite state machine, and that'll do what you need for your game. I mean, look at what your needs are, and then find the fastest way there, I suppose.
Awesome. So we're going to wrap up, but we've got one last question I want to raise to you both. So I'm the blue sky person, clearly, in this panel. I'm always coming up with the big blue sky questions. What's the big thing coming up in the future? What's the thing you're most excited about in automated playtesting? What's the thing that you think is going to change the field for you in the coming months, weeks, years, whatever it is? Sahar, what are you excited for?
I love blue sky questions. That's where the research development comes from, right? So I think we have spent a lot of time looking at play testing as a plain agents, right? So I like what is exciting for us to take this play testing agent as an integrated component to develop other examples of AI solutions. So example of it is like content generation or content tweaking that I mentioned, right? So that's an exciting thing, and what we are interested to look into. But before being able to get there, what I really like to be able to spend time on is understanding better content. So being able to actually do content exploration and modeling, how the whole content space correlates to each other. How can we describe players in the content space together? So this part is something that excites me.
What about yourself, Christopher?
For me, one of the things that we think a lot about here at Modelize Post, and we do talk to a lot of game developers, is for me cross game generalization is like a really big one. So being able to eventually pull an agent that was trained or adapted to one particular game, and then maybe transferring it to another game in the same genre, that alone, it would be sort of where it's actually functional in a production system, right? And you just pop it over from one game to the other because they're sort of the same. Because every game is unique, but most games in the same genre are also to a certain extent kind of the same. So it should be doable, right? And that's something that I'm super excited about, being able to move models and data from one game into an adjacent one.
Well, hopefully we'll get to see more from both of you, and the absolutely fantastic work, I think, from both of you that's been that's generated in the last couple of years. Sahara, I remember seeing your work as well at FDG last year, which was fantastic. And Christopher, you and I have talked a little bit about Glitch Finder, I think, in the past, as in between us. So it would be, I'm very much looking forward to seeing more from both of your respective teams in the coming future. Thank you both for joining us tonight. It's been really great to hear your thoughts on all things automated playtesting.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks. Speak to you soon. All right. There we go. We made it. I've been told that we're going to wrap up shortly because our producer needs a burger. Apparently, that's critical. But let's bump back over to a wonderful co-host, Enrica. How are we doing?
Good.
Good.
If you see me like that, it's because it's getting warmer and warmer here, and I cannot turn on my fan. So that's why you see myself
You're okay. You're okay. It's you're not rendered in too high a resolution that it's oh no. Because I have the same problem because I have a curtain that closes over into my office, and I have all these lights on, so I'm just sort of.
Yes.
And you can see it with me as well because I'm really pale.
Artificial beach.
Yeah. I'm now just getting gifs of burgers getting posted in the chat. So yeah, we've got one more day of the summer school to come.
Yes.
which is quite exciting. Which actually means that we have a little bit of an easier time, I think, with some of the summer school TV, which is great. But I mean, first of all, we're going to have 2 talks from the team at AWS. We're going to have churn prediction and QA testing, which is a case study with Capcom by Lisa Kim. And then we've got how to build a fraud detection system for games on AWS by Frederick Nowak. So, but the real focus, I think, of our summer school is actually going to be on the game jam. So we're going to find out who won, maybe have a look at some of the games. Enrica, did you do the game jam when you went to the summer school before?
Yes, I did.
How is that? Like, I've done game jams before in a day or what have you. It's incredibly stressful.
It was crazy because there, like, you were actually, I mean, I was in Greece for the first time. So that was very hard to combine like the game jam and then the social events and then going around a little bit, but we managed. It was fun.
I mean, that is the one thing that I think we're getting away with the exception of time zones with the summer school this year, is that you're not too engrossed in the evening socializing that it has an impact.
The upside is that you can work more on your game.
There you go. No excuse, ladies and gentlemen, currently working on your game. No. You're all gonna do great. I took the liberty of scrolling through the Discord earlier just to see some of the updates, and I know Antonius has ran a couple of the check-ins on the Zoom, and they look great. I'm really excited to see what comes of that. But yeah, we should wrap it up. I think it's time for us to go away, and I'm going to get chewed out in the post stream session because I managed to get my microphone not to work and everything else. But there we go. Let's see. Yes, Luke Dickin just points out, after we said we need to feed the audience, we also need to feed the producers. So I suppose, yeah, I mean, without the producers, we don't have a show. And that is true, because we just sit here and talk to really intelligent people and ask them all the questions, and I press all the buttons. That's the only reason I'm here. I'm the button presser. And then we wanted someone smart to hang out with, so I was like, okay, we'll get Enrica in. Just professional button basher. Right, that's it. We're going to wrap up. Enrica, thank you so much. You've been great as always. Looking forward to a nice break for the evening. Huge thank you, of course, to all of our guests for this evening. To Romy, Christina, Sarah, Jan, and also to Christopher and Sahar. Yes, as a production team says, without a mic, we don't have a show, but I turned it on now, so it's all good. And thank you, of course, to all of you who's tuned in to watch. This will be available for you to watch afterwards, of course. And we'll catch up with you tomorrow for the last episode of Summer School TV 2021. I say 2021 because we might get away with doing it in 2022. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Credits.